by virtue of the invitation that was issued by the Speaker and the acceptance of it by Prime Minister Netanyahu on 2 weeks in advance of his election, is that on both sides there has now been injected a degree of partisanship, which is not only unfortunate, I think it's destructive of the fabric of the relationship.
I couldn't disagree more. The American people and both parties in Congress have always stood with Israel. Nothing and no one should get in the way of that.
Tensions between the Obama administration and Benjamin Netanyahu escalated this week, just days before the Israeli Prime Minister's planned address to Congress, with National Security Advisor Susan Rice calling his visit destructive to the fabric of the relationship between Israel and the U.S. Speaking outside Jerusalem Wednesday, Netanyahu said it appeared the West had given up on its commitment to prevent Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons, a claim Secretary of State John Kerry dismissed during testimony on Capitol Hill while questioning the Prime Minister's ability to make sound judgments.
The Prime Minister, as you recall, was profoundly forward-leaning and outspoken about the importance of invading Iraq under George W. Bush, and we all know what happened with that decision. He may have a judgment that just may not be correct here.
The bickering between the White House and Benjamin Netanyahu over his planned speech to Congress hit a new low this week, with U.S.-Israeli relations deteriorating to the worst seen in decades.
There has now been injected a degree of partisanship, which is not only unfortunate, I think it's destructive of the fabric of the relationship.
The Israeli leader's decision to accept House Speaker John Boehner's invitation behind the White House's back further strained a frosty relationship with President Obama.
The Prime Minister and I have a very real difference around Iran. It does not make sense to sour the negotiations a month or two before they're about to be completed.
With the suggestion that Netanyahu was playing election politics, the administration refused to meet with him 2 weeks before Israelis go to the polls. Netanyahu has doubled down, saying he too had a very, quote, profound disagreement with the White House over Iran. And while he wasn't picking a fight with the president,
I intend to speak about this issue before the March 24th deadline. And I intend to speak in the U.S. Congress because Congress might have an important role on a nuclear deal with Iran.
The speech became fodder for partisan bickering. About 24 congressional Democrats plan to skip the speech and are urging the speaker to delay the address, which they warned was, quote, undermining the president's diplomacy.
It's out of order in terms of the protocol and respect.
Undeterred, the speaker is taking on the White House head on.
What is destructive, in my view, is making a bad deal that paves the way for a nuclear Iran.
As the visit draws closer, the jabs are getting sharper and more personal.
Have you even had this discussion?
He may have a judgment that just may not be correct here,
leaving little hope for a thaw in this tense relationship anytime soon.
I respect the White House and the President of the United States, but I must do everything to prevent such a great danger for Israel.
And this is just the latest war of words in the long simmering feud between the White House and Netanyahu. Last October, an unnamed senior administration official was quoted using an expletive to describe the prime minister, calling him a coward for his refusal to reach a peace deal with the Palestinians.
Well, the fallout over Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's speech to Congress next week continues, and top U.S. officials are sharpening efforts to undermine his visit as tensions mount over the Prime Minister's efforts to stop a possible nuclear deal with Iran. Many are saying this is a historic low point in relations between two long-term allies. Joining us now with insights on how all of this is playing out, former Israeli ambassador to the UN, Dan Gillerman. Welcome, Mr. Ambassador. Great to have you on the show again. Thank you.
Thank you, Uma. It's always good to be with you.
You know, some observers are saying the White House now sees the Prime Minister as a serious threat to President Obama's efforts to reach an agreement with Iran to limit its nuclear ambitions. Do you believe the Prime Minister's visit will further erode the already icy relationship with the White House?
Well, I very much hope not. Let's face it, Uma, this whole affair
maybe could have been handled better. It could have been handled more diplomatically, more tactfully. But at the end of the day, the Prime Minister of Israel is coming to your capital. This is your best friend. This is your closest ally. This is your strategic partner. This is the country that is at the forefront of the fight against terror and Islamic extremism. And I think that the reaction by the President, by the White House and others is very unfortunate, because even if they regard this a mistake, they must realize that the Prime Minister is doing it out of true anxiety. The Prime Minister is awake at night because of his anxiety and worry about Iran becoming a nuclear power. And he feels that by talking to the two houses of Congress, he can maybe make a difference. And I think that he is at the point where he feels that a bad deal is approaching and that the light at the end of the tunnel could indeed be an Iranian train coming the other way, and he's doing everything to stop it. And I think every freedom-loving person, including the United States of America and especially its president, should be more helpful and understanding in welcoming the Prime Minister of Israel to the United States.
You know, we just heard from National Security Advisor Susan Rice going as far as saying that his visit is, quote, destructive of the fabric of the relationship. Is the Prime Minister at this point gambling on the Congress and not the White House as the best place to leverage his sway on U.S. policy on Iran?
First of all, I think the statement by the National Security Advisor is a very unfortunate one. I think that Susan Rice could have chosen better words to describe the relationship. You know, it's very strange, but Secretary Kerry is hugging Mohammad Jawad Zarif, the Iranian foreign minister. The president is exchanging letters with Ayatollah Khamenei, the supreme leader of the main perpetrator, harborer of terror in the world, of this evil regime in Tehran, which is threatening to wipe Israel off the face of the map and denying the Holocaust while preparing the next one. And a visit by the Prime Minister of Israel and an address to Congress is destructive. What is destructive is terror. What is destructive is Islamic extremism. Israel stands at the forefront of that. And therefore I believe that at the end of the day, the American people realize that, and the President of the United States, elected by the American people and reflecting their will understand that at the end of the day he has to stand by his ally. And even if he's not happy about this visit, I think he will realize that Israel indeed is the only ally that the United States in this very dangerous and vicious neighborhood can rely on.
Is he trying to use his leverage now more with Congress as opposed to the White House? Is he placing his bet that a hearing in Congress will impact the current debate in a greater way than anything that he could do with the White House?
Well, I believe the Prime Minister knows that Congress will have eventually to approve any deal and to fund and finance the consequences of any deal, and therefore he feels that Congress may have a lot of leverage when it comes to approving a deal with Iran, which I hope will only be reached once there is a good deal on the table. I don't think the Prime Minister is trying to bypass the President. He realizes that at the end of the day, it's in the Oval Office where decisions are made, and I believe that he deep down believes that this President will see the real reason why this is being done, and this crisis, it is a crisis of confidence and of trust between two friends at the moment, but we've had our disagreements before. They were always ironed out, as you do, within family, within friends, in total trust and in total discreet discussions. And I believe that once this is over, the relations between the two people and the two countries will prevail. I don't see this as a major crisis, and I'm sure we will overcome it and prevail over it.
All right. Well, the stakes remain quite high, as you point out, and we look forward to seeing how all of this drama unfolds next week. Mr. Ambassador, as always, we thank you so much for joining us with your insights from Tel Aviv today.
Thank you, Puma.